Alright, so welcome to Unit 1. We are going to be learning in Unit 1 about multiplication and division, and the first thing we're going to learn about is finding all the factor pairs of a given number. Now, you should, in your math journal, I know you've got that whisk introduction that we did the other day. Now you're going to want to flip to the next page, and the first thing you're going to want to write down is your learning goal. That's always going to be the very first thing you write down in your journal. It's going to be on the top. And this is a really important thing to know because this is the goal for the whole lesson. This is what we want you to be able to do by the time you get done. So, moving on. Write that down. If we're going too fast, pause it. You're also going to see that it's up here too. You'll find it at the top. Okay, so what is this? You know what this is?
I know. Multiplication table.
Ding ding! We have a winner. It's a multiplication table. So hopefully you guys have recognized this, and I just want to talk briefly about it because we're going to be going back to it a little bit later in the lesson. So this part on the middle, this part that's yellow right here, those things are called products. A product is just the answer to a multiplication problem. So these are all the answers when you see multiplication problems. The part along the outside are called the factors. So these are the numbers that multiply to give you these products here. So if I wanted to multiply 7 times 3, I go down 7, 3, those are my factors, my product is 21. Okay, so remember this, it's going to come back to get you later.
Alright, so we have vocabulary here. This is something you're going to want to write down, and it says here that factors are whole numbers that multiply to get a larger number, and we have a cute little example over here. And so just another example, 1 times 24, you get 24. 2 and 12, you multiply together to get your number. 3 and 8, and 4 and 6, all equal up to 24 when you multiply. These are all different factors of 24.
And there are several ways to find factors, but we're going to talk specifically about 2. If you learned another way and it works for you, awesome. We're just going to show you 2 as an example. There are the factor rainbows.
My favorite.
And the factor stackers. So we're going to get to both of those, but before we do, there's a rule that applies to every single factor. And it's right here, and you're going to want to write it down, and you're going to want to put a little star next to it because it's really super important. Every number has 1 and itself as a factor pair. So if I'm talking about the number 5, it's got the numbers 1 and 5 as factors. They multiply to get to 5. If I'm talking the number 20, 1 and 20, multiply to get to 20. They're both factors. So every single number, you could go up to a million. A million has a lot of factors, but 2 of them are 1 and a million. So you always need to make sure you start with those. If you forget them, you're not going to have listed them all. So we're going to move on to the first way to find them, which is factor rainbows.
Yes. So.
Woo! Oh, wow! Woo!
How do we find factors? Well, with the factor rainbow, let's say we have to find factors of the number 8. Going back to our number 1 rule, we can start with 1 as a factor. So 1 and 8 would be a factor. Then we get to put a cute little arc above it, or line above it, and we show that we're multiplying those two numbers. So that's our first factor rainbow. Then I think to myself, well, 8 is an even number, so I'm going to try 2. 2 times what equals 8? 2 times 4 equals 8. So that's my second rainbow, or factor rainbow. Now I want to think, am I done? I don't know yet. Well, 3 doesn't work into 8 evenly. And then we're going right back up to 4 again. So I'm done. There's my factor rainbow. So the factor pairs for 8 are 1 and 8, and then 2 and 4. Now you get to try one for yourself. So in a moment you are going to pause and come up with your factor rainbow for all factors of 10. So take a moment to pause and get that down in your math notebook.
Back.
Oh, we're back. Here we go. So you should have, of course, 1 and 10. You can draw your little line, show your little rainbow. Then once again, I'm thinking 10 is an even number. So I'm going to start with 2 again. 2 times 5 equals 10. So there's my other factor rainbow. Now thinking 3 does not go evenly into 10. 3 times something doesn't equal 10 evenly. 4 doesn't work either. Now I'm back up to 5 again. So I'm all set. So the factor pairs for 10 are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. How'd you do?
Get them all? All right, the next one is our factor stackers. So factor stackers, again, you're finding all the factors. We're doing it essentially the same way. Instead of making a rainbow, we're going to be drawing a little line to separate them. So if we are listing all the factors of the number 15. So again, always start with 1 and the number. So I've got 1, and 1 has a factor with 15. 1 times 15 gives you 15. So now I need to think, are there any more? Well, 15 is not even, so 2 is not, so I'll continue going up. 3. Does 3 times anything give me 15? It does. 3 times 5. So if you need to imagine a little multiplication sign here, go for it. Whatever helps you. Alright, so now am I done? Well, I'm not sure, so I'm going to go up to 4. Well, 4 times nothing gives me to 15, so I know that's not a factor. Then 5, well, I've already got that, so I know that I'm done. So my factor pairs for 15 are 1 and 15, and 3 and 5. So now that you've done an example with us, you're going to get to try one on your own. So I want you to try and use that factor stackers way to find the factors of 18. Now, I know that we've done 8, we've done 10, we've done 15, and all of those had 2 sets of pairs. Not every number is going to be that way. So make sure that you go through just like we did and double check that you get them all. So try 18, see how you do, and then come back and we will try it with you and see if you got them all right. All right, so 18. We are going to start with our rule. So 1 and 18, of course. Hopefully you guys got that one right away. Now let's move up to 2. Well, does 2 times anything get to 18? I know 18 is even, so 2 must go into it. So 2 times what? Well, 2 times 9. So now let's move on. What about 3? Am I done? 3 times anything give me to 18? It does. So this one has more factor pairs than the other ones. So 3 times what gets me to 18? It would be 3. Yes. Mrs. Van Dam knows her facts. 3 times 6 gets you to 18. Moving on. 4. 4 times nothing. 5 times nothing. And then I get back up to 6. So my factor pairs for... Oh, I have a typo. Factor pairs for 18 are 1 and 18, 2 and 9, and 3 and 6. Alright, this next part you don't have to write down. It's just a quick refresher for you on what you have to do next. Now that you've watched the video, this is the next step. So if you remember, you've done the W and the whisk, now you got to do the S. The S is your summary. So remember, your good summary must have all the main points in your own words. So in this case, you're going to be talking about factor rainbows, you're going to be talking about what a factor is, you're going to be talking about factor stackers, you're going to be talking about the factor puzzles. So there's a lot of parts to this that you're going to write in your own words. Remember, you're explaining it to someone who doesn't know how to do it. That's how you want to think about it. You need to also write an example problem you came up with. So in this case, you're going to be coming up with an example of finding factors. If you want to come up with a factor puzzle too, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
But what you really need to focus on is writing a question someone could solve that has to do with factors. Okay? You're going to be shooting for a minimum of 5 sentences. It probably will be more than that. Won't be less. We said before it'll be probably about a half a page, but the important part is that you get all the information in. Other things you might include connections to past lessons. So maybe in 4th grade you learned about factors. Maybe in 3rd grade you can talk about that. Also real world applications. So when might you see this in the real world?
And the last step, remember just coming up with a good, effective question. So you want to be really specific, and it should have to do with something that you didn't understand from the lesson. Or if you think you understand everything, okay, but then what might someone else ask or might not have understood? Also, you can include something you need to know to be able to expand your knowledge beyond this lesson. So think of some other connections and write it down as a question too. Some type of a good question. Good luck.
And that's it. So get those done and come back to class and be prepared. All right.
Okay.
Puzzles.
Now we're on to our factor puzzles. And a factor puzzle is basically a little grid, and I like to think of it as like a condensed version of a multiplication table. So if you remember from earlier, we saw this multiplication table, and a factor puzzle will be similar to this. You're going to have factors, you're going to have products, but they're just going to be mixed up and smaller.
So imagine these rows cut up and moved around, and these rows cut up and moved around.
So we're going to find factors and the missing products by looking at a little factor puzzle that looks like this. This is what a completed one looks like. You might have ones that have missing factors and products.
So if you see these are just like the factors that are along the outside. 4s and 9s, 3s and 7s, and these are the products on the inside. Okay? Alright, so here's how it works. I'm going to walk you through one step by step. So these are the exact same problem. You only have to write down once, you don't have to write it down twice. But if this, you'll draw your little 4 squares, fill in the numbers, leave this one blank if you want. You don't have to put in N. You can leave it blank. You don't have to write in the little lines. We just wrote them there so that you'll see that we're going to end up filling those in with factors. So pause this, write it down, take as long as you need to, and then come back and I'm going to show you how to solve it. Alright, so if I'm looking at these factors, I'm going to start over here with 14, or these products, 14 and 42. So I'm thinking in my head, I know 7 goes into both of those, so I'm going to plug in. Yes?
I'm thinking 14 and 42 are both even numbers, so there could be a factor of 2 as well. Why can't 2 work?
That is a really good point. And if you go through and do your factor rainbows of all of those, you're going to find 2 and 7 go into both of those, and so does 1, really.
Yeah.
So the general rule, typically what will work is the bigger of the 2 numbers, but not always. So you may have to do a little guess and checking. It might get a little messy. So if you tried 7 or 2, and then you got over to another part and it didn't work, then you know that you picked the wrong one. You just have to go back and change it and try a different one. So, no big deal. And if I didn't know 14 and 42 had 7, if I didn't know my facts very well, that's why we taught you factor rainbows and factor stackers. You got to go back and try those. Okay, so we found 7. We're going to hope that that's right for now, because 7 times something gives you 14 and 42. So now we're going to look over here. How about these? Well, 7 times 2 gives me 14. So I know that this is a 2, so I fill it in over here as well. Because whatever is at the top is at the bottom, it just goes straight across, same factor. So now I've got this part filled in. Now, how can I fill in? I got to 10 here. Actually, I think I go down to 42. 7 times what gives you 42? Well, 6, if you know your facts. So 7 times 6 gives you 42, and since I put my 6 here, I can plug it in over here. Remember, the end goal is you want to figure out what n is, but you've got to get through all these steps to get there. So we've got 6 here. Now I've got 1 more missing. So 2 times what gives me 10? 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. I bring my 5 down here. Well, now to find n, it's simply multiplying 6 times 5, and I get 30. Woohoo! Alright, so that is our example. Now you get to try one, you lucky ducks. So here is our example for you to try. And again, you only have to write it down once. It's just this one I'm going to work on, and this one will leave blank for you. So go ahead and start in whichever way you want. Pause this, try and fill in these missing factors, and find n. And then we're going to walk you through how to do it if you forgot, but just try it.
All right, so I'm going to look at 35 and 45. Oh, thank you. So I can point. I like to point. And looking here, they both end in 5, so I'm thinking a good factor for both of these is 5. 5 times what equals 35, and I get 7. So 5 times 7 equals 35. I'm going to bring it across here. So now I'm going to focus on my other 5. I like 5s. 5 times what equals 45? I know that 5 times 9 equals 45, and then we can bring that one across too. So I'm going to look up here, and one more. We have 7 times what equals 14. 7 times 2 equals 14. I'm going to bring it back down here. My last option is now filling in for solving for n. So 9 times 2 equals 18. And we did it.
Hopefully you guys got that.